It's time for ROTD Weekend. If you listen to this podcast, which you do because you are listening to my voice right now, I assume that you enjoy cooking or learning about cooking anyhow. And so what I've been up to this week might, I want to say, be interesting to you, but I mean more that I think you'll probably understand. So I've been on my own in the evenings this week. The kids are at their dad's and Marty's having his end of semester stuff at the university, and he is at work late eating on campus. And so it's just been me. And what ended up happening was that I told you about the smoked chicken breast recipe last Friday. And I was like, those smoked chicken breasts, those are so good. I'm just going to make them for myself tonight. And since I had just recently done the podcast episode about them, I didn't go and look up anything on the website about how to make them. I was just like, I know how, I'm winging it. Well, they turned out ridiculously good. They were like the best smoked chicken breasts I've ever had in my life, just done on the grill with wood chips folded up in some aluminum foil. Just amazing. And so I was like, yeah, those are really good. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, they seem even better than what I remember. And so then I went and looked at the recipe and realized that I'd done a bunch of things slightly differently than what was listed in there. And I'm pretty sure that the new way was better. So then the next night I'm on my own again and I'm like, okay, now I have to do a comparison and find out for sure which is better. And at this point, I wasn't doing it like my normal testing for telling you about for recipes on the website or anything. I just wanted to know for myself. Well, it turned into a 4-day evening smoking chicken breast experimentation session at home. I'm sitting in the hot tub at the end of the day with my book. I read fiction novels in the hot tub at the end of every day. I don't know if I've told you that before. Sipping on a glass of wine, and the smoke is going for hours at a time every day. I'm sure, actually, now that I think about it, my house was probably the one that anybody going for walks is like, oh, I want to know what they're making, because it smelled so good. Anyways, this all started as just my own, I'm going to just make some chicken breasts on a whim sort of thing, and turned into a big process. So now I really do think that I've perfected it even better than before. And I think I'm going to redo the recipe on the site. And then I'm going to have to redo the podcast episode where I told you how to make them, because the new way is better. It's really, I'm going to tell you, it was two things that I think made the biggest difference. One was that I oiled the chicken breasts before putting them on the grill. The recipe that I had before didn't have you do that. And I just found that the outside was just a little bit more soft and not as dry. It was really good. And then the other thing was I undercooked them. So as they were cooking, I had a probe thermometer into the thickest part of one of the chicken breasts, and I was watching the temperature go up, just checking on it every now and then. And the first night, I guess I had the temperature of the grill a little bit low. They took an hour and a half to get up to temperature, but they were hovering at 150, 151, for a little while. And so then I was thinking about how when you do sous vide chicken, you don't have to cook it all the way to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, because it sits at a lower temperature for long enough, and the length of time kills the bacteria, and I was actually, I'm going to just tell you, we're on a boil water advisory where I live here. Again, it's the second one in 3 weeks, which is super annoying. But anyways, we're on this boil water advisory, and they're talking about how you have to boil the water for at least a minute to kill the bacteria. And all this is coming together in my head. And I'm like, wait a minute, if these chicken breasts are at 150 for a certain amount of time, they're probably safe to take off the grill. So I looked it up, and sure enough, 150 for 3 minutes. If they're at 150 for 3 minutes, they are safe. So when they got up to 155, I took them off. And, they don't even need to rest after, because they're not super hot. The juices aren't going all crazy in them. You've cooked them so low, and you just cut right into one, and it was fully white through. It wasn't really pink or anything, but so juicy, so smoky, just, oh my God, amazing. So yeah, I'm going to have to redo the blog post and recipe on the website, and I'm going to have to redo the podcast episode too. because those two things were not part of it, using the oil and having the temperature be a little bit lower. So those are the main keys. But yeah, so I've been having fun this week playing around with perfecting smoking chicken breasts in the evening while nobody is here and it's just me. That has been my nerdy cooking jam this week, you know? Well, then speaking of nerdy cooking, the conversation I'm playing for you today is with, I don't know if he would describe himself as a cooking nerd, but he is definitely very knowledgeable about Peruvian cuisine. That's right. I am sharing a conversation between me and Nico Vera from piscotrail.com. This is a conversation from a couple of years ago. You know, I haven't really addressed this with you guys, but yeah, with all the vacation and end of semester craziness, I have been not having time to schedule new guests on the show. And so I have been playing older interviews. I do the intro, this whole thing about the chicken breast. That part is all new. And the part at the end that I come back and tell you what I've been up to in my kitchen, that is all new. But the interview segments, I have been going into the archives and choosing a conversation just because things have been a bit crazy. But next week, I have a new interview for you for sure. So stay tuned for that. And now, you know what, though? This conversation is wonderful. If you haven't heard me talk to Nico before, you are going to love him. He is a vegan Peruvian chef, super knowledgeable, great ideas, delicious food. You are going to love this conversation with Nico. He's had writing in Taste, Food 52, Epicurious, Delish. He is well known for all of his Peruvian brilliance and just for being a great guy. You're going to love this. Here is my conversation with Nico Vera. Hey, Nico, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's really great to see you again. So I would love you to fill us in on what you have been cooking, what's going on in your culinary world.
Yeah. So I have two kids, so I cook a lot for them these days. And we're a plant-based family, so it's always fun to try new recipes that my wife and I would enjoy, but that we can also share with the kids. And sometimes it's really fun because I get to cook with my daughter. She's 3 years old, so sometimes we cook together, and that's really special. Besides cooking for the family, I'm still collaborating with some publications on stories and recipes, and that's been exciting, especially because they have found me. Instead of me pitching to these magazines, they would reach out to me. For example, Condé Nast Traveler wanted some stories about Peruvian food and culture, and so I contributed 2 stories for them, and that was a lot of fun to have that put out there. One of them was about the pachamanca, which is an earthen oven cooking that is really in all cultures across the Americas, but I wrote specifically about Peru. I've also been sought out by Delish, and they put together a collection of recipes that represent Latinx culture, like rice and beans and tacos and ceviche. And I wrote about empanadas. And empanadas that's a rich tradition in my family, and it's one of the dishes that I've been teaching my daughter how to prepare. And it's also been a lot of fun to write about Peruvian cocktails. Pisco Cocktails Punch magazine reached out to me to write about a cocktail called Capitan, which is a lot like a Manhattan, but instead of whiskey, we use Pisco, the grape brandy from Peru, and sweet vermouth. So it's a fun cocktail because it has some Italian origins because of the vermouth, but Pisco's from Peru, so it's got this very spirited combination, and so it's fun to write about that. So yeah, that's what I've been up to in the past year or so.
That is so exciting. So your 3-year-old is making empanadas with you?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'll do the filling, which is a plant-based filling. Is a vegan ground beef that you can get pretty much at any market. And it cooks essentially like the original version. I saute it with onions, with salt and pepper and cumin, oregano and garlic. So it's very savory. And so that's the filling. And then for the dough, it's essentially flour, water, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of salt, and some vegetable shortening. So work that all together, then roll it out into discs, kind of like tortillas, and then fill them, fold them, and bake them. So she's getting really good at filling them and folding them. And that's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I bet. Actually, you've just reminded me. I was at first like, oh wow, a 3-year-old making empanadas. But I used to make pierogies with my mom when I was really little, and very similar, right? It's a filling and then a wrapper, and then you have to pinch them closed, and then they boil. But yeah. So fun.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
You're making me hungry with the empanadas. Do you have a surprise recipe to tell me about today?
I do. Yeah. I picked one of my favorite recipes that I learned to cook from my mom. And it's a very, very traditional Peruvian recipe with a beautiful origin story. And very excited to share it with you. It's called causa limeña.
Oh, can you say it again?
Causa limeña.
Oh, can you spell it for me too? I want to make sure I.
Yeah. Causa is Causa, and limeña is essentially an adjective that means from Lima. So Lima is the capital of Peru. So Lima is Lima, but limeña is Lime, Ñ, the N with the squiggly, and then an A, limeña.
Oh, perfect. Love that. Causa limeña. Am I close?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect. That's perfect.
So you said it has an interesting origin story. Can you share it with us?
Yeah. So causa limeña is essentially a chilled potato dish. And potatoes are originally from Peru. So Peru has hundreds of different varieties of potatoes. They're all originated in the Andes Mountains. They're very resilient to the weather. They're at high elevation. And it was one of the staples of my ancestors, the Quechua and the Inca people, indigenous people in the Andes Mountains of Peru. So what they did essentially is that they would boil the potatoes, mash them, and then mix them with hot peppers. Maybe some citrus from the Andes or from the nearby jungle, the high jungle. And that's essentially the dish. It's mashed potatoes with hot peppers and some liquid like citrus. But that was more than 500 years ago, right? So because of colonial foodways, new ingredients have been introduced to Peru, like lime juice, like dairy, and so on. And we have Creole cooks in Lima now that have shaped the causa into a new dish. It has transformed over the past 500 years into something that can be really fun and creative today. So, for example, there's a writer, a chronicler called Ricardo Palma, and in the late 1800s, he wrote a book called Tradiciones Peruanas, Peruvian Traditions. And in this book, he described the street food vendors in Lima, how at particular hours of the morning, noon and afternoon and night, a particular dish would be marched down the streets of Lima. So at 2 p.m., it turns out it was the time for the causa. So that you knew that at 2 p.m. you could get your causa, right?
Oh, wow.
In the morning, it was more maybe empanadas or maybe a dessert. Later on, it could be arroz con leche. I mean, so many different tamales. Tamales are a very popular morning dish, but causa was in the afternoon. And back then, causa was more like a casserole. You can imagine a large dish where you have like a layer of the mashed potatoes, and then on top of that, maybe you have some hot peppers, maybe you have what we call palta, is avocado, and that's your casserole, and you can serve like a cake, like different wedges of that. But then over time, you add more ingredients. They started adding seafood, fish, either on top or as a middle layer, like a tuna salad, a middle layer. And then eventually they became more like individual servings, more like a trifle. You can think of like a cylindrical layer of potato, then a filling, then more potato, then a topping. But my grandma, she used to make it into like a small little balls that you put the topping on top, and maybe a little bit of parsley or an olive on top of that. And she even fashioned the stem from the parsley into a handle, like a basket, and placed that over the causa, so it looked like a little causa basket.
Oh, wow.
So really charming. That's how I make it. Minus the basket handle, but that's how I like to make it. I like to shape it with the toppings, this vegan tuna salad topping that I make with chickpea, and then decorate that with the parsley and the olive.
Oh,
That's how my mom and I made it the last time we cooked. And I learned to cook causa from my mom, so that's why this is a very special dish for me. And it's a way to preserve not just my culture, but a family tradition.
Oh, well, I love that so much. Thank you for bringing it here to share with me and everybody listening. Where do we start to make this dish? What do you start with?
Well, first you have to make sure you have all the ingredients, right? The base, of course, is the potatoes. So you need about 1.5 pounds of, I prefer the Yukon Gold potatoes. The Yukon Gold is actually a cross between a North American potato and the Papa Amarilla. Amarilla means yellow or gold, right? So the Yukon Gold is very similar to the Papa Amarilla from Peru, and that's a great potato to use for this. So about 1.5 pounds is maybe half a dozen small Yukon Gold potatoes. We need some salt, about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Ají amarillo, as a paste, is a hot pepper sauce, and about 1 teaspoon of that. And you can usually get ají amarillo at the Latinx markets in your town. You can get them online and so on. It's usually imported from Peru, but some farmers, I've seen some farmers grow ají amarillo here, even here in the Pacific Northwest, and some of them make it into paste and sell that as well.
If somebody wanted to just make this today and didn't have that sauce, could they use a different kind of hot sauce or like a sriracha or something? Or would you?
Yes, absolutely. Just about your favorite hot sauce would work with this.
Okay, great.
Once we dive into the preparation, you'll see how versatile this dish is, and I can describe tips on how to make it different but familiar as well.
Yeah, perfect.
So besides the hot sauce, olive oil, about 2 tablespoons, lime juice, about 2 tablespoons, a can of unsalted chickpeas, then a quarter cup of vegan mayonnaise, a quarter cup of diced red onion, and a quarter cup of celery, plus the parsley for garnish and Kalamata olives for garnish.
Oh, all of that is sounding amazing.
From there, right, it's essentially a 2-step process. We want to cook the potatoes and make a puree, and then we want to make the topping. So that's 2 separate things.
Right.
So for the potatoes, we boil them in water. You want to make sure you cover the potatoes in enough water, maybe a couple of inches of water. Bring them to a boil, simmer them, let them cook. It could take maybe 20 minutes or so. You can test them with a fork to see if they're tender. And I cook them with the skin on.
Oh, that's what I wanted to know. So skin on and whole. You haven't cut them or anything?
Haven't cut them or anything.
Skin on, a lot of people do salted water.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think probably why is, you could, since it can be mashed, you could, but it's an extra step to peel and to cut. And if you think back about how this dish originated in working class homes, you don't always have a peeler. You don't always have the time to do all the extra chopping. You just put the potato, because once it's cooked well, the skin actually starts to break off. And it's really easy to just peel by hand.
Yeah, I agree. And I even find, I'm not sure about with the Yukon Gold because their skin's a little softer. But like with russet potatoes, if I leave the skin on and then I just go in with my potato masher, often the skin like all clumps up on the masher, and very little of it ends up being left in the mash anyways. So, skip that step and then you save time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So once the potatoes are cooked, I strain them, put them on like a baking sheet to cool, maybe 30 minutes or so I can handle them and peel them by hand without them being too hot, right?
Oh, and you, sorry, I just realized you said at the very beginning that this is a chilled potato dish. So you don't need to keep them warm. So get them out of the water, let them cool off, deal with them later. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Now we want to make this mash, right? And you could use a masher, but I like using a ricer, right? So a ricer is like a giant garlic press. We can put a potato or half a potato in it, press it, and out comes almost like these potato noodles. Mm-hmm. So that makes it really light and fluffy and very divided. So it's very easy to work with once everything is passed to the ricer. Then you can use a spatula to almost instantly just start mixing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think people don't think about the potato ricer, or if you don't have one, like, oh, I don't need one, I have a potato masher, whatever. But it makes such a big difference, actually. Like, one of the things that make, for me, like, potatoes sort of mushy, stodgy, or not as fluffy is because you're mashing so much to get those last few lumps out to make sure that they're smooth. As you're doing that, you're like over mashing the bits that are already mashed. And so that kind of ends up with a less fluffy texture, right? Whereas with the ricer, everything just gets processed one time.
Yes, that's exactly that. I would also advise against using something like a mixer, like an electric mixer, like for mixing dough, because that would overwork it. It'd be too much gluten. It would be too too elastic, too sticky. You want it to be fluffy. You want it to be light, easy to handle. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Love that. Thank you.
So then now we start adding the ingredients we talked about. We add a teaspoon of the salt. We add a teaspoon of this ají amarillo paste, or we can substitute another hot pepper. If you're substituting another hot, now ají amarillo is hot, but it's not like Tabasco hot or habanero hot necessarily. So if you're adding a hot pepper, I would add maybe a small quantity first. And once everything's mixed, you can taste and then decide if you want to add some more, right? So you add the hot pepper, you add the 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of lime juice. And you can just start blending everything with a spatula. It'll be soft and fluffy and light and creamy. And that's what I love about this dish is that it was originally, it was originally already plant-based, right? So to me, it's fascinating that pre-colonial, there was no real use of dairy in indigenous culture in Peru. But you have essentially a mashed potato that is dairy-less, right?
Nico, you know what's fantastic? We have a mutual friend, Emily Pastor, right?
Yeah.
Emily was on this show 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she was sharing a recipe for vegan mashed potatoes also. But for a hot vegan mashed potato dish. And she was saying similar, like it's amazing that we think that mashed potatoes have to have dairy, but you can do this without, and they end up just as delicious and fluffy. I'm just seeing this wonderful theme in the show. So what I wanted to know was, just before we jump ahead with this, if we're using a different hot sauce or a different citrus, what kind of flavor, like how should it taste more like potato, or should we really be getting the heat and the citrus at this point if we're trying to decide if we want to add more spiciness or not?
It should really be a balance, right? So it should be a savory dish. You should taste the salt. I think salt brings out a lot of flavors. So the caveat though is that in Peru, potatoes are really flavorful. You almost don't need anything to add to them to just enjoy them. You could just bake them and that's it. That's all you need. But the salt here will definitely bring out the flavors. And it should be a really nice balance between the citrus and the hot, right?
Okay.
And, there's another very traditional Peruvian dish, ceviche, which is usually made with seafood, but you can, of course, have a plant-based version with other fruits or vegetables. And that has a similar idea. You have the salt and you have the heat and you have the citrus, right? So that balance of those ingredients is very predominant in Peruvian Creole food, especially in the coast.
Oh, yeah. That's wonderful. I love that. Okay. What's next?
So after the olive oil and the lime juice and everything is mixed together, you can taste it and decide if you want a little bit more heat, or maybe you really like the kick of the citrus. You can add a little bit more of that, but you don't want it to be too watery, right? You don't want to add too much liquid. It has to be creamy, but you need to be able to shape it. That's really important. Okay, so now we want to shape it. And this is the fun part. And this is something that I think my daughter is ready for, because she likes playing with Play-Doh and things like that. She's very crafty. And essentially, you divide the dough into 12 parts and you shape them to small balls, almost like little golf balls.
Okay.
Right? So you put some of the dough in your hand, and you can, with flat palms, move one palm, say clockwise in a circular motion until you shape and rotate. And then you have a ball that is maybe 1.5, no more than 2 inches in diameter. And you have a dozen of those. You can put them in a small tray and then let them chill for about half an hour.
Is the mixture sticky at all in your hands, or should it be sort of coming off easily as you're making that ball?
It should not be very sticky, but if it does stick a little bit, then you can just wash your hands and with water and dry them and then try again. Right? Okay. But they should not be very sticky. It should be easy to work with.
Okay, great.
So that's the part of the potatoes. So now we want to do the topping, or in some cases, it could be the filling, but we're going to do the tuna salad as a topping. And instead of tuna, we use chickpeas. So chickpeas are very accessible. Of course, they are a protein. And if you use canned, then they're ready to go. One thing that is also fun about using the canned chickpeas is that the liquid, the aquafaba, is a fantastic vegan ingredient. It can be used in baking. I like to use it to make vegan pisco sour, right? Because pisco sour is a pisco cocktail from Peru, and it's pisco, the spirit, and citrus, and syrup, and typically egg whites. But instead of egg whites, you use the aquafaba, and boom, you have this frothy, plant-based cocktail. Right?
And it froths up the same way, right? Because people use that liquid to do like a vegan meringue, don't they?
Yeah, you can if you whip it, you can do a vegan meringue. Yeah, it's a fantastic ingredient. So whenever I use canned chickpeas, always save the aquafaba
Hmm.
and see what else can you use that
Yeah,
for,
yeah, I
right?
love that.
So the canned chickpeas, I strain them, reserve the aquafaba, and then I mash them. I can use a fork, just mash the chickpeas, and I add the ingredients that we talked about before. We have a quarter cup of the vegan mayonnaise, a quarter cup of a finely diced red onion, and a quarter cup of finely diced celery. And essentially, I'm making a vegan tuna salad, right? Because you got the
Yeah,
mayonnaise, you got the onions, the celery, and instead of tuna, chickpeas. So
lovely.
mix all that together. You can taste it. It should be savory. It should be balanced. It should. Oh, sorry. We have a little bit of salt left over because at the beginning we had
Hmm.
1.5 teaspoons of
Hmm.
salt. We reserved half teaspoon for this. So we add the salt as well, and then you have your tuna salad. You can taste that.
Is there any of the citrus juice in the tuna salad part or just in the potato part?
That's a great thing. I might not have it in the recipe, but I almost always squeeze a little bit. It brightens everything up.
Oh,
Yeah,
lime juice, especially more than lemon on like tuna salad. I think it just take like thinking about like canned tuna. You're sort of doing like that play on that. It takes it to something that is just delicious instead of just your normal going to elementary school lunchbox kind of tuna salad, right? So I imagine it would
absolutely.
be quite similar there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, when you were pressing the lime juice for the potato mash, before composting the lime halves, I would have them aside, and I know I can squeeze a few more drops out of that
Hmm.
onto the tuna salad. Yeah.
Lovely. Love
So
it.
that's a fantastic tip. So now we have this tuna salad
Hmm.
and the mash, the shaped balls.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, we're chilling. We bring them out, and it's now time to assemble. So now you could put everything out and say in a serving tray or individual plates, and you have the gausa ball, and you make an indentation on the top. You could use your thumbs to make a little indentation, essentially to create a small well
Hmm.
to put the topping into, so that the topping, some of it is inside the gausa, and then the rest is overflowing over the gausa. Right?
Nice.
Do that for all the dough that's been shaped, and then you top everything, garnish everything with parsley, chopped parsley, and a pitted olive on top.
So just so I can picture it, because I think it would be obvious if I was making it, but just so I can picture it, about how much of the chickpea salad is going onto each ball? Is it like about a tablespoon?
Yeah,
More
it could
than
be at least a tablespoon. It could be even more. You can
okay,
make it really generous, because when you eat it, it's not a one bite dish. And
okay.
essentially, you could use a fork or a spoon and maybe cut it in half, and then make sure that each bite has some potato and some of the tuna salad.
Hmm.
It can be not as much chickpea tuna salad as the potato, but visually they could be
Almost.
almost the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. I picture it now, and then you top it with the parsley as a garnish. Did you say
And I like,
olives?
yeah,
Olives,
in Peru,
yeah.
olives are almost in a lot of savory dishes that I
Really?
can think of. Yeah, Kalamata type olives are similar to what we have in Peru. So pitted olives,
Are
it's a
the
nice
are the
garnish.
olives native to Peru, or are they part of the Creole mixing of cultures there?
They're not native.
They're not
They're
native. I
part of
didn't think
the
so.
introduced by colonial foodways.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, but they've caught on, and people like them,
Oh
especially.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're in a lot of dishes now for sure.
Oh wow, nice. Oh, that sounds amazing. And actually, you know what that's reminding me of? The like tuna salad idea with the olive is like a niçoise, right? Like a niçoise.
Yeah,
Oh, does that have potato on it too? The French niçoise salad, does it? I think it might have potato.
and if it does, it's thanks to Peru.
Yeah, yeah, it would be. Oh, I love that. That's so wonderful. This sounds delicious. Now, you said this might have been like an afternoon food in like the marketplace, but when would you eat this now? Breakfast? Is it for special holiday dinners or just a snack? When is this served?
Today in Lima, I would say it's more of a lunchtime appetizer, even before say a larger. So especially if it's served like the small gausa that I described,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
even if it's the casserole style, I would say it's an appetizer. My mom used to prepare it. She was very famous for her gausa dish. Whenever there was a family potluck or friends were having a gathering, they would always say, Sarita, Sarita, ¿puedes preparar tu causa? Can you prepare your causa? Of course. And she loved to cook for her family and friends, and this was one of her most prized dishes. So, and it usually be lunch or dinner.
And this would be a fantastic potluck dish. You just said that because it's cold. So you can make it and you just take it in a container and you don't have to worry about keeping it hot or anything like that, right?
Yes, exactly that. And a few months ago, my wife and I went to a potluck with some of her coworkers, and I brought the causa as our contribution, and I had shaped the mash already into the causa balls, but I had the chickpea tuna separate and the garnish separate. So it was really special because in front of the guest, I assembled it. So I just laid out the appetizer and then did all the indentations and the toppings and the
Oh,
garnish. So it wasn't just here's the dish, like I'm gonna show you how it's made.
I love that. That's a really great idea. People love that interactive seeing it being made aspect. It's so it brings so much liveliness to your contribution, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, Nico, this sounds delicious. I cannot wait to try it. Can you let people know where they can find you online if they want to see what you're up to, get more delicious recipes? Where should they go?
Yeah, of course. So I have a website. It's piscotrail.com. Pisco, like the Peruvian grape brandy, is Pisco, and trail, Trail, all one word, piscotrail.com. And there on the site navigation, I have links to the stories I've written and links to recipes. And this recipe is there. It was published on Taste magazine, a national food publication. So you can read more about the history. I write about how mashed potatoes in Europe and North America are, a comfort food. And so I compared that to this Peruvian comfort food,
Mm,
how they're similar, how they're different. I think it's an exciting dish because it's familiar, right? We all love mashed potatoes, but it's different. I
mhm,
love preparing this in the summer, but I think it's a fun winter dish as well because you have a little bit of heat, you have something
mhm.
a little bit spicy, it's savory, it's chilled, so it's refreshing. So it's a nice bite. It's
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really fun, nice bite.
And I think
So
there's something too about, in North America or in the United States, we're so used to having mashed potatoes as the more like potatoes are hot, often mashed, but like that kind of thing. Having the cold version and seeing that other side of them is always fun too.
yeah, I think it's a surprise to your palate. It's
Mhm,
unexpected. If you don't
mhm.
tell someone what this dish is, it's like, oh, it plays with your palate, it plays with your tongue because it's cold but spicy. So you have that taste battle going inside your mouth, right? It's like, oh, well, this is refreshing both, but it's also hot, right? So it's really fun and it looks beautiful too. I think that's really important. And when a dish looks fun and beautiful, then it's
Mhm.
really inviting to. I want to try that. I really want to try that,
Oh,
right?
I agree so much. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the show, Nico. It's been so great connecting with you again. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I look forward to next time, and I hope everybody has fun trying this recipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. Oh my goodness, the causa, right? I have to tell you, since I recorded this, I've had the opportunity to actually try these at a Peruvian restaurant here in Orlando, and they are amazing. If you can try them somewhere, try them or make them using Nico's recipe. I will link to it in the show notes of this podcast episode or head to piscotrail.com, Piscotrail.com, and you can find everything from Nico there. Sign up for his monthly newsletter, all of it. He's fantastic. So as to what I am doing this week in my actual work kitchen, so this is not about the smoking chicken breasts, although I might end up doing a round of new pictures and video. We'll see. But that is not on my list for this week. For this week, I am doing a very basic how to pan sear shrimp. Now, I actually have been doing a lot of research in this, and there are people who have you adding sugar to the shrimp along with their seasoning, and that's supposed to help them brown in the short time that they're cooking. So I want to experiment with that. And then I'm also playing around with some different seasoning combinations. I really want to get something that's like garlicky and citrusy. So yeah, I'm working on that, both the pan-searing shrimp perfectly and a really nice seasoning blend for them. And then I'm also doing, I think I've told you a little bit about this already, that guacamole seasoning, which actually is going live on the Cookful this week. The guacamole seasoning recipe, which is where you mix up this batch of like a seasoning blend that you can then have in your pantry. And whenever you want to make guacamole, you don't have to start chopping all the onions, tomatoes, cilantro, all that stuff. You just mash up an avocado and add some of the seasoning. So you can just have this quick guacamole. But then I was thinking about how if you have that seasoning blend or you have the seasonings that are in it, you sometimes do want to do some of the chopping. And so there's this like fun little dance of like mash the avocado and then you're going to add actual chopped red onion. Then you don't add the onion powder. You're going to add some minced garlic. Don't add the garlic powder. If you have cilantro, you're using fresh cilantro, then you don't use the dried cilantro. You see what I mean? So it's kind of like this or that of fresh ingredients and seasonings that you can use what you have on hand that's fresh. And if you don't have those things, then you can use the dry. So I'm trying to capture that idea in a video showing the fresh and the dry alternatives. So I am doing that this week. I hope that made sense to you. I'm not sure it sounded like it made sense, but I know in my head what I'm trying to do. So hopefully in the end it will work out and I won't just be making a very confusing video. As to what is going live on the sites this week, that guacamole seasoning is going live. You're going to love this. It just is the perfect blend of spices for guacamole. There's a little bit of cumin in there. There's a little bit of lime zest, the salt, garlic powder, onion powder. Oh, there's something called tomato powder that is optional, but I buy it on Amazon and it is just a wonderful thing to have on hand to add a little bit of extra like brightness and umami and tomato flavor to things. Really, really cool. So that recipe is going up this week. And then a really nice dinner, kind of inspired by cabbage rolls, but it's not exactly lazy cabbage rolls. It's a ground beef and cabbage dinner. It's cooked like in a Dutch oven. And there's the ground beef, cabbage. There's some sauerkraut, dill. You can do caraway. Really hearty and delicious. And I think you're going to really like that. That's going live on Cook the Story this week. And then what is happening on this podcast this week? We've got some shake and bake pork chops. Ooh, a really nice Italian salsa verde. Wonderful on fish. Oh, I'm telling you about the ground beef and cabbage. We're doing some poached salmon. Oh, there's a ham gravy because you know Easter's coming up. Deviled eggs as well. Easter food deliciousness. So those are all things that are happening on this podcast this week. If you are not already subscribed, why aren't you subscribed? Go to cookthestory.com/ROTD and you'll see the buttons there to subscribe to the show on like Apple Podcasts, Spotify. The other thing you can do is just go on your phone to your favorite podcast app, whatever you listen to podcasts on, and search for Recipe of the Day. You will find me. I am everywhere. Now, if you want all the links that I have mentioned in the show today, you can look in the show notes, like on your phone while you're listening to this episode. A lot of podcast apps will show them there. The other thing you can do is go to cookthestory.com/ROTD. And then everything there is arranged by date. So you're looking for the April 12th episode from 2025 and you click on that and that takes you to all the links that I've been talking about. You can get to Nico's stuff. You can get to the recipes I've been telling you about. It's all there. cookthestory.com/ROTD. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Nico, for being a great guest. I loved re-listening to that conversation. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.